What is Disneyland if not for its rides? That's why it helps to know a little bit about the rides before you go. Luckily for you, I'm going to tell you all about the rides today, so whether you're getting ready for your first trip ever or you just want to compare notes, this video is for you, so let's get started. First, let's go up Main Street to make our way to our first land, Tomorrowland, where we'll talk about the state of the Astro Orbiter, then the Astro Blasters, Star Tours, go around the bend to Space Mountain, and then finally we'll head to Autopia, the Monorail, and finally Finding Nemo subs. Now, the beautiful Astro Orbiter that serves as a fun welcome to Tomorrowland is down for refurb from the beginning of 2024, and it says it will be back winter of 2024. Now, does that mean February or December? I'm not sure yet, but it looks like it's still down mid-February, so we'll see. When it does come back though, it will be back with some fresh paint and ready to take you soaring over the hub of Disneyland, and thank heavens because I love the kinetic energy that comes with this ride. Not to be confused with the Astro Orbiter, there's the Buzz Lightyear Astro Blasters, This is a any height people mover style ride, which means it's constantly moving and moving while you load, although it can slow down and even stop if you need to move from an ECV or a wheelchair. The Astro Blasters opened in 2005 and is a game style ride where you use your laser guns to help Buzz Lightyear fight robots and of course defeat Zurg.
Blast him with anything you got.
This is a fun little ride to do with the kids, but the lines can get backed up really fast thanks to Lightning Lane. And the queue is out on the hot cement, so I wouldn't wait in this line any longer than like 25 minutes. It's best to try to hit this ride in the morning time, if you're not planning on doing Genie Plus and getting Lightning Lane for it. Across the way you have Star Tours, a simulator ride that originally opened in 1987 on the heels of the popularity of Star Wars. This ride is great for original Star Wars fans, but it's not great for those who get motion sick easily. Like myself, I can't do the moving room with the moving screen anymore, so I stay with the baby since you have to be 40 inches tall to ride the ride, so I just let my husband and my daughter do it. You'll usually have a pretty short wait time at this ride, typically somewhere between 15 and 35 minutes. Anything more than that means it's probably a really busy day or Space Mountain is closed. Speaking of Space Mountain, Disneyland's second roller coaster ever added in 1977, Space Mountain takes you on a winding journey through space and ends with a picture at the end that usually is perfect for bribery. Just like Star Tours, you must be at least 40 inches to ride this roller coaster. It also offers Lightning Lane and Single Rider, which can be handy because the line to this ride builds up so fast. especially if it's an early entry day for Disneyland property hotel guests, which starting January 20th, 2024, will be every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. This means on those days, Disney hotel guests will get a 30-minute head start on certain rides before the regular guests do. But they only have access to certain rides. I have those rides indicated in this guide as early entry rides, and Space Mountain is one of them. So if it's an early entry day, I would rope drop Matterhorn or some other rides nearby first, and then hop on Space Mountain because it will get busier right at first as regular and early entry guests merge, and then it calms down for a bit before it gets its regular busy times. Also, from April 5th to June 2nd will be the Season of the Force, and Space Mountain will get its Star Wars themed overlay and will turn into Hyperspace Mountain. A typical standby wait time for Space Mountain usually will be between 35 and 65 minutes. Of course, there is a train station stop in Tomorrowland, but we're going to talk more about this later. For now, let's move on to Autopia. Autopia is a ride that often gets looked over. It's also a ride that you can smell and hear from a mile away. Autopia is an original to Disneyland on its opening day because in 1955, the American highway system was a very new and exciting thing, so the idea of hopping in a car and pretending to drive across the country was super duper cool. These days, the theme seems a bit dated for a Tomorrowland, but it's a classic and a must-ride for many.
To make sure your drive is a safe one, please remain seated with your seatbelt fastened. Keep your hands, arms, feet, and legs inside the car, and remember to watch your kids. Driving is really easy.
Now, this ride does offer Lightning Lane, and you must be at least 32 inches to ride it, but you have to be at least 54 inches tall to drive it by yourself. The wait time really depends on how many are using Lightning Lane that day, so it could be anywhere from 10 minutes to 45 minutes. It just depends on the day, so keep your eye on that. Next up is the Disneyland Monorail, a ride that was added in 1960. The monorail was meant as both a means of convenience and a ride. This monorail is most definitely a tribute to Walt's love of trains and looking forward into the future. The monorail only has 2 stops, one in Tomorrowland and one in the middle of downtown Disney. Of course, to get on in downtown Disney, you have to scan your park ticket and have a reservation for Disneyland that day because it takes you into the park. The monorail will take you around Fantasyland, past the front of the park, into DCA a little bit, through downtown Disney, and then it loops back into Tomorrowland. Riders can remain in their wheelchairs and their ECVs to ride this ride. The monorail will close down for a couple of reasons. If it's really hot outside because it doesn't really have AC, and it closes during the fireworks, but will reopen again 20 to 30 minutes after the show. Generally, the wait time in Tomorrowland is pretty short, and the stop in downtown Disney will depend on how many are in the ride to begin with and how many get off at that stop, but should still be pretty short. Now, Finding Nemo's Submarine Voyage was originally the Submarine Voyage, featuring war-style subs, nautical themes, sea creatures, and even mermaids, which ran from 1958 all the way to 1998, and then reopened again as the Finding Nemo subs in 2007. Now that is a long refurb. Now, this ride is not for the claustrophobic, and they do say that you can remain in your wheelchair for this ride, and what they're talking about is the observation deck, where you can watch the entire ride without having to climb down into the winding stairs and sit uncomfortably close to strangers. If you would like to experience the ride this way, just talk to a cast member and they will lead you to the outpost. All that aside, this ride is actually really cute and is a favorite with my kiddos. It has some educational moments.
The colorful reef that surrounds
around us is a biological community that thrives in warm, shallow waters. It usually takes more than a year for a coral to grow only 1 inch. An amazing fact when you consider that Australia's Great Barrier Reef stretches over 2,000 kilometres.
It has a few cute moments and even a few spooky moments featuring all of your favorite characters from Finding Nemo.
Chico! Nemo! It's Nemo! Yay! Nemo! Hey, Pearl! We saw a huge volcano.
The wait time for this ride can build up fast because loading in and out of this ride takes a while and there's not a lot of queue to walk through and kill time. So if you don't want to wait 30 plus minutes to ride it, you're going to want to ride it early in the morning or late at night. Now let's move over to Fantasyland, where we'll start at the Matterhorn, then go to It's a Small World, then back to the hub with the Storybook canal boats, the teacups, Alice in Wonderland, then over to Dumbo, Casey Jr. Train, King Arthur Carousel, then on over to Mr. Toad's, across to Pinocchio, down to Snow White, and finally finishing at the Peter Pan ride. Oh boy, that's a lot. I hope Mickey took his vitamins today. The Matterhorn bobsleds was a roller coaster that was added to Disneyland in 1960 thanks to Walt's love for Switzerland. Of course, we don't have people climbing this mighty mountain like they used to, but it still will send you up and down a snow-capped mountain with possible Yeti sightings, fast speeds, whipping you side to side, so beware sore necks, and finally ending with a small splash. The wait time for the Matterhorn is usually the very shortest in the first 2 hours of the morning, and then the wait times will fluctuate throughout the day, but will be 30 minutes or more for the rest of the day, at least until the end of the night, when everything calms down anyway. And if you don't have Lightning Lane, you can also use the single rider line to cut back on your wait times. If it weren't for the 1964 World's Fair and Mary Blair's ability to design with color and shape, we wouldn't have the It's a Small World ride that we have today. I personally love this ride, especially the exterior design of it. Besides that, it's a nice ride for when you need to get out of the elements and get off your feet. It's an any height ride that also has a boat that allows you to stay in a wheelchair to ride, which is awesome for those who aren't able to transfer out of their wheelchairs. Generally, the wait time is pretty short for this ride, but there's a couple things you have to factor in. The wait times can suddenly get really long right after parades and shows at the Fantasyland Theater. It's like the Astro Blasters, where because of Lightning Lane, its wait times can be all over the place and very much dependent on the whims of crowds and what season it is. Now, during the Christmas season, when this ride has its Christmas-themed overlay, it can be very busy come evening time when the ride is lit up and more people tend to buy Genie Plus during that time. It also may close during fireworks depending on the winds, and you can watch the fireworks and other projection shows outside of It's a Small World. Lastly, due to its holiday overlay, it will close for that transition in the end of October usually, and then from January 8th to the 18th this year for its removal. Moving into the hub of Fantasyland, you have the Storybook Canal Boats, an original ride to the park, although it wasn't as adorable as it is today, especially if you find a sleeping duck family in it. It's an any height ride that takes you through many versions of popular storybook towns and kingdoms. Just don't let the big whale intimidate you. Once you go through his mouth, it's smooth sailing from there. Generally, the wait time for this ride is around 15 to 25 minutes. I personally wouldn't ride it in the heat of the day on a hot day because both the line and the ride are pretty exposed in the sun. My two favorite times to ride this ride is at sunrise and sunset. That's when it's really sparkly and more magical to ride, in my opinion. The Storybook Canal does close down for fireworks like most of the Fantasyland rides do, but it will open again after they're finished. Right next to the Storybook Canal, you have the Mad Tea Party, or what most people call the Teacups. This ride is another Disneyland original that pretty much always has a 15-minute wait or less all day long. It carries a reputation for being quite the nauseating ride, and you will see it mentioned in my nauseating Disneyland Rides video, so check that video out if you're a queasy rider like myself. Even though I don't really love riding it, I can photograph this sweet little ride all day long. Speaking of tea parties, next door is the Alice in Wonderland ride, a cute little dark ride that features all the characters from the Alice in Wonderland movie while on board your very own caterpillar. This ride has been running since 1958 and it's a very sweet little ride, but the queue can get backed up by midday and the wait times can get as long as 35 minutes, especially in the afternoon time. Another thing to note is this area gets really congested during parade times because the route goes right there in front of them, so just be aware that during parade times, the canal boats, the teacups, and Alice in Wonderland are going to be super crowded whether people are riding the rides or not. This ride also closes during the fireworks, but the nice thing is the wait time goes way down after, so you can always sneak on for a short wait then. Let's go to another Disneyland classic ride, Dumbo the Flying Elephant. The ride is self-explanatory and very popular. The wait times can be up to an hour on busy days, especially if it's an early entry day, and it also closes for fireworks. So, if you want to avoid long lines for Dumbo, morning and right after the fireworks are going to be your options. The Casey Jr. Circus Train was originally supposed to be a thrill ride on opening day at Disneyland in 1955, but they couldn't figure out how to stop it from doing Papa Wheelies every time it went up the hill, so they had to slow it down a bit to a little train ride experience you have today. Any height can ride this ride, although if you're a taller adult, it's a bit of a squish to get into the carts. That are the cages, and if you look closely at the open sleighs, you'll be looking at pieces from the original King Arthur carousel from 1922. This ride usually sits around a 15-minute wait or less, so it's a good ride to hop on when others are busy. Speaking of the King Arthur carousel, let's go there next. You can always count on this carousel for a short wait time and a magical ride. I just did a mini documentary on the history of the King Arthur carousel. I highly suggest checking it out because it has a fun history. This ride is friendly for anyone at any height, including people in wheelchairs. You can remain in your wheelchair for this ride. And if you're lucky, you may be joined by a character or two, or the Pearly Band for live music while you ride. Next to the carousel is Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, a favorite in my family and another original any height ride. Fantasyland is the land with the most rides original to Disneyland and the most any height rides. But back to Mr. Toad's. When you climb into your car, you find yourself becoming Mr. Toad. As you rip through the English countryside in your 1920s vehicle, causing destruction everywhere you go. After a visit to the pub, things really heat up and you find yourself guilty in court. Then you crash with the train and find yourself in... well, you know. This ride gets overlooked by most, so it's unlikely to see a wait any longer than 15 minutes. Next is Pinocchio's Daring Journey. This ride came in with the 1983 Fantasyland refurb, but it feels like it's been there all along. You will also have a guaranteed short wait times for this ride. Not only is this a dark ride, but it's also a dark ride, if you know what I mean. Between the creepy carnival, the kids turning into donkeys, and a huge whale popping out at you, you can see why some choose to skip this ride. But don't worry, it ends with lessons being learned and dreams coming true. Next to Pinocchio's is Snow White's Enchanted Wish, a ride that used to be spooky but no longer is thanks to a recent refurb. This ride is an any height ride and original to the park, and really the changes they made are for the better. Because of these newer changes, Snow White's is a bit more popular than the other dark rides in Fantasyland and will usually sit around a 25-minute wait. It's important to know that pretty much every ride in Fantasyland, but the Teacups and Casey Jr., I believe, close down during the fireworks and open back up about 20 minutes after they're done. Finally, for our last ride in Fantasyland, Peter Pan's Flight, a ride that was a huge hit on opening day and still is today thanks to the flying boat design and miniatures of all the lands from the movie. An old Disney hack used to be to rope drop Peter Pan's, and I wouldn't really do that because that line goes from 5 minutes to 45 minutes so fast, especially if it's an early entry morning. Pretty much the wait time is always going to be around 45 minutes for this ride, give or take, all day, every day. So you just need to decide when you're ready to wait that long, and I don't suggest having it be in the hot afternoon because that line is very exposed and you're very close to everyone else in it. I'll just leave it at that. Let's head back up to ToonTown where we'll hit 3 rides: Roger Rabbit's, Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, and Chip and Dale's Gadget Coaster. One ride that didn't change in the 2020 ToonTown refurb is Roger Rabbit Cartoon Spin. It still holds all of its 1990s charm, color scheme, and styling. Now, don't let the word spin throw you off. You don't have to spin if you don't want to. You have more control over that. And the wait time for this ride gets up there fast, thanks to Lightning Lane and overall popularity. I actually like to rope drop ToonTown, or I get there after fireworks because the entire land closes for fireworks, but then it reopens right after the fireworks, and not a lot of people know about it, so it's really chill. I really like it at night. But on average, I would say plan on the wait time for Roger Rabbit being around 45 minutes every day. Next is Disneyland's newest ride, Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, which is an any-height ride that offers lightning lane. This is such a cute ride, I haven't heard a single person say they didn't like it. The queue alone is worth going through just to see all the classic Mickey cartoon Easter eggs and movie puns. Crazy old Goofy takes you into the movie screen where you get to experience being in a cartoon firsthand. It's so fun catching all the details of this ride. There's a reason Mickey and Minnie's is so popular and why the wait is usually around 45 to 60 minutes, except in the morning. It usually is quite short early in the morning. Just make sure you check that Disneyland app and make sure it's open and working before you go all the way over there. Of course, there's also Chip 'n Dale's Gadget Coaster. It had some small aesthetic changes done to it, but it's still surprisingly fast little mini roller coaster to warm up a little one on who's never done big people rides before. They do need to be at least 35 inches tall to ride it, but both of my girls have loved this ride from their very first time. If you haven't seen ToonTown since all of its new changes, I highly suggest going over there and checking it out no matter what age you are. It is so fun. Real quick, I want to move down to Main Street and mention all of the Main Street vehicles and talk about the Disneyland train, because you can't go to Disneyland without riding the train, in my opinion. Those who know the history of Disneyland and Walt Disney know that he was a huge fan of trains, and the train around the park has always been part of the big picture in planning the park. So it's no mistake that the train welcomes you into Disneyland and is the very first ride you see when you get there. There are two ways you can do the Disneyland train. The first is to park your stroller and do the full loop from Main Street all the way around and get off at Main Street. For the fully intended experience and the full tour of the park, plus a tour of the Grand Canyon, or you can use it to get from one land to the other as long as you can fold up your stroller and carry it on with you. You also can remain in your wheelchair or your EVC to ride the train as well. The train has 4 stops: Main Street, New Orleans Square, ToonTown, and Tomorrowland. You can get on and off at any of those stops. The wait time is usually pretty short. If it's 20 minutes, it's a really busy day at the park. But a lot of your wait just depends on how many get off at the stop that you're at. So it can be different at each stop. My family and I like to hop on the train when we're getting tired and overstimulated. In fact, my husband falls asleep pretty much every time we ride the train. We should probably have a sounds of the Disneyland train, white noise machine or something for him at night to fall asleep to. The Main Street vehicles are similar to the train in which they can be viewed as a ride or as a way to travel without walking. Now you do need to be able to climb in and out of them, and most of them require you to park your stroller to get on, except for the horse-drawn trolley. If you can fold yours up and it fits, then you can take your stroller on that. These vehicles are a callback to Walt's youth in the Midwest in the early 1900s. Usually they're not out all day, so check the app and see the times of day that they'll be out. I love absolutely everything about these vehicles. Whether I'm riding on one or one's just driving past me while I'm walking down Main Street. But my very favorite is riding on the top floor of the omnibus. As someone who loves photography and videography, it offers such a unique vantage point to Main Street and the castle. Not to mention it makes for great people watching. Don't pass up the opportunity to ride one of these vintage vehicles. Let's go a little further back in the day to Frontierland, the land that not a lot of people pay attention to unless they're stopping for a quick lunch. Starting with one of my all-time favorites, Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. This roller coaster that's designed after the old mining towns of the West has been the wildest ride in the wilderness since 1979. If you want a bit slower, more gentle ride, try to get the seat in the front of the train. And if you want a faster, more wild ride, then sit in the very back. You do need to be at least 40 inches tall to ride this roller coaster. And it also offers Lightning Lane if you don't want to wait in a longer line. The first 2 hours of the day are going to be your best bet for the shortest waits, otherwise you're looking at a 45 to 65 minute wait all day. It's also a really fun ride to do at night. It does have a hard time getting going in the morning, so always check the app first before you head over to it. And no matter what, you're in for a rootin' tootin' good time on this fella. The other two rides in Frontierland are the big boats. Let's start with the Mark Twain riverboat first. I actually really love riding this beautiful steamboat. There's a certain romance to it. Anyone can ride the Mark Twain. You can even remain in your wheelchair or EVC to ride it. It has 3 floors for you to choose from for your riding experience. While you get a guided tour of the rivers of America, this is a great ride to hop on when you need to get away from the crowds and usually has a short wait time. Currently it's been under refurbishment, but it should be up and going by February 3rd. And if you get lucky, you may come across Princess Tiana or the Straw Hatters to accompany you on your ride. But if pirates and sailing ships are more your jam, you may want to jump on the Columbia instead. Both of these ships load at the same dock. You do need to be able to do stairs to ride the Columbia, so please take note of that. Kids love exploring the ship, and if it's working, they'll even shoot off a cannon. And don't forget to check out the sailors' quarters in the lower deck. Both the Columbia and the Mark Twain are featured in Fantasmic, which will be returning on May 24th of this year, so they only run in the early parts of the day, so they may have time to get ready for the show, which reminds me, when Fantasmic does return, plan on the walkways in Frontierland being incredibly crowded in the evening as people flood to the area for the show, so if you're not watching Fantasmic, stay far away from this area. Next, let's adventure into Adventureland, where we'll hit 2 rides, the Jungle Cruise and Indiana Jones Adventures. On to the Jungle Cruise. Fun fact about the Jungle Cruise, it's an original Disneyland ride and all of the plants are real. When they were picking plants for this ride, they specifically picked plants that would grow big and fast, so would look jungle-like quickly. That's why when you look at pictures of the early days, it looks a lot less jungle-like, at least not like it does today. And all those big and overgrown plants is what makes it kind of fun and creepy to ride it at night. It's a very different ride at night. Give it a try. The Jungle Cruise is an any-height ride that has special boats for those who need to stay in their wheelchairs, so everyone can enjoy the corny jokes, animal animatronics, and the backside of water. The wait times for this ride generally are shorter and sit around 15 to 25 minutes, but if Indiana Jones closes, it will go up to 60 minutes sometimes. Therefore, if Indiana Jones is closed and you see people lining up in the upper deck, turn and go somewhere else because that's going to be a very long wait. Let's get into the Indiana Jones ride, another one of my favorites. In fact, it was the cool new ride when I went to Disneyland for the first time in 1996, and I remember waiting 2.5 hours for it. The wait time for it these days isn't that bad. It usually sits around 45 to 60 minutes. It's kind of like the Peter Pan ride where a lot of people will rope drop it, so it gets pretty busy fast and it always closes down a lot. So again, check before you go. The nice thing is the queue is fun to wait in. The exterior part is surrounded by plants and is shaded. And the interior is fun because it's fully themed, although it is very dark inside, so there is that. My trick is looking at the exterior line. If it's backed up and snaking all around the back, it's going to be a longer wait because that's where you actually do the majority of your waiting in the standby line. So if there's not a lot of people lined up outside, jump in the ride then, because it shouldn't be too long of a wait.
I shall now give you counsel to safeguard a miraculous journey. Here in your transportation devices are ingenious pouches for safekeeping all earthly treasures when the journey becomes bumpy.
You do need to be at least 46 inches to ride this ride, so if you have little ones with you, you need to do rider swap, and if you don't know what I'm talking about and how it works, check out my video that breaks down Disneyland's line system for you. It will explain a lot of the terms I've been using today. There's a reason why this ride is popular. It's different than most rides as you adventure on the bumpiest Jeep ride of your life, complete with fire, snakes, and spiders, and of course, you narrowly escape a massive rolling boulder, Indiana Jones style. We have a lot to talk about with New Orleans Square and its rides in 2024, so let's get right to it. Pirates of the Caribbean is always a trusty classic ride to go on for me and my family. The line moves fast, even when it's a longer wait. You get 2 fun little hill drops, the entire family can ride it. It gets you off your feet for a good 15 minutes, it's great. But Disneyland just announced that Pirates will be temporarily added to Lightning Lane when Haunted Mansion goes down for refurb around January 22nd. This is very bad news for the Pirates ride.
Waiting to board. Sit closer together and keep your ready hands inboard. That be the best way to repel boarders.
This means they will be taking a ride with a usual short and fast-moving line and literally bringing it to a halt. Clearly, they are doing it because Haunted Mansion goes down. That will be 2 Lightning Lane rides that are unavailable, so I can see that Disney has to add another ride to the Lightning Lane list to maintain some kind of value to the Genie Plus system. But this is not going to be good. Really, New Orleans Square is going to be a bit of a mess this year until everything is finished, but once it's finished, it's going to be so much better, I think, with less traffic jams and more authentic feel all around. Just in time for Disneyland's 70th anniversary in 2025. Finally, one last tip about Pirates. It does have a lot of banging sounds, like guns getting shot and cannons, so if you have anyone in your party that's sensitive to that, just be aware. So what's going on with Haunted Mansion? Starting January 22nd, it will be closing to extend the queue area into a pleasant garden area complete with water features and gazebos. This kind of garden theming will also expand into the area between the Haunted Mansion and Tiana's Palace, making it a lovely place to take in the ambiance and clear some of the crowded spaces away. From what I understand, they'll also be adding a legitimate gift shop building outside of the Haunted Mansion and a new elevator to make the ride more wheelchair friendly, and I think it will just add to the whole experience. I wouldn't stress too much about classic favorites of this ride being changed. Mostly there's just going to be additions, and mostly to the outside. Now, an official timeline hasn't been released yet, but they basically have 2 options. Hurry and get this all done during the spring so they can open Classic Haunted Mansion for the summer before it goes back to Haunted Mansion Holiday, or keep the holiday overlay up, wait until mid-August when Halloween season starts again, and open it then. I don't know. I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Be sure to bring your death certificate.
On to what is considered Critter Country, at least for now. Let's move over to the other big refurb. Let's talk Tiana's Bayou Adventure. I'm super excited for this change. I've loved putting together all the puzzle pieces and trying to put the story of what the ride's going to be and get it all figured out. That's why I'm planning on putting a video about it together shortly, so stay tuned for that. Now, if you've been to Disneyland recently, you probably noticed the large construction site in the middle of Critter Country. It's been down since May 2023, and the best they've given us is late 2024 for an opening date. I'm sure a lot of that is to leave some room for the unknown and the hiccups. No matter what, I think we can plan on a few things when this attraction opens. More color and light to this usually dark mountain, new sounds, new smells, and possibly even new tastes. Oh, and massive crowds. Between Haunted Mansion and Tiana's Adventure, you can plan on New Orleans Square and the Critter Country area being insanely busy for the Halloween and Christmas season this year. And that takes us to poor little old Winnie the Pooh and his ride tucked back of Critter Country, which is a colorful, short, and sweet dark ride for any Winnie the Pooh fan. They even have a honeycomb car for wheelchairs, and even though this ride has only been around since 2003, it feels like a classic ride to me. Just don't forget to stop by Pooh Corner after the ride and get a sweet treat while you're at it. Another overlooked ride from Critter Country is the Davy Crockett Explorer Canoes, a ride that's been making people sweat it out since the 70s. As you row your canoe down the rivers of America, this ride tends to only be open late morning and into the afternoon, so if you skipped arm day and want to get your row on, plan on doing it earlier rather than later. And don't worry about the wait, it's usually less than 15 minutes. And finally, from Critter Country, we come to Disneyland's newest land, and the one that's not even part of this galaxy, Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, the home of two rides, Millennium Falcon, Smuggler's Run, and Star Wars Rise of the Resistance. First off, Rise of the Resistance. This is the most popular ride in Disneyland right now if you ask me. Now, you must be 40 inches tall to ride this, and it has individual Lightning Lane, which means if you want Lightning Lane for this ride, it's not part of Genie Plus. You have to spend another $28 or so to skip the line. But to be honest, I don't mind standing in this line. They have fans and benches and plenty of details to check out to keep you busy. Wait times range from 45 minutes up to over 100 minutes on busy days here. This ride is busy from the get-go. Rope dropping it will maybe save you 10 to 15 minutes of a wait time, but you'll still be waiting. The wait times for Rise of the Resistance go up and down all day depending on how much it closes down. You'll usually see a bit of a slowdown around parade times and sometimes around dinner because there's not a ton of dinner options out in that area. So it naturally thins out around this time in this area. All of that being said, you must ride this ride. Whether you're a Star Wars fan or not, it uses a lot of new ride technology, making it a very unique and fun ride with a cool line and experience that adds to it, so most definitely go for it.
You have what I want. You know the location of the secret base, and I will take it from you.
And if you're an old school Star Wars fan, you'll appreciate all the details in the Millennium Falcon, Smuggler's Run, queue, and ride. I mean, what Star Wars fan doesn't want to fly the Millennium Falcon, really? This is a simulator ride, so I tend to skip it, but it is fun that everyone gets a job to do on this ride, and it's interactive with what everyone is doing. If you want to help Chewie steal back the Millennium Falcon, you need to be at least 38 inches tall to ride this ride. The wait times can kind of be all over the place, but tend to calm down in the evening. It does offer Lightning Lane as well as single rider if you want to skip the line altogether. Otherwise, plan on waiting 25 to 45, maybe even 60 minutes in standby. So what are your favorite rides at Disneyland? Do you rope drop or Lightning Lane? Let's talk rides in the comments section, or you can just keep watching more videos by clicking on the next one on the right. Thank you for watching and take care.